In this video, we're going to have a look at how to learn 12-point Tictocs. Thanks very much to Mitch for getting in touch earlier and suggesting we do this one. So when learning 12-point Tictocs, the most important thing is actually learning 4-point Tictocs. So 4-point Tictocs are going to be your base. So you're going to be able to fake sort of the positions 1 and 2 and all the positions between those 4 Tictocs to a degree. But as long as you have a really, really strong 4-point Tictoc, you'll be able to move on to a 12-point Tictoc. So we're going to start with nose up Tictocs. Now you're probably pretty good at these because these are probably the ones that you started with in the very beginning. However, we are going to do them slightly differently in that you cannot lean the nose in the direction that you want to move. We're going to have to learn to do them keeping it completely straight up and down, and you have to make either a forward slash or a back slash with your cyclic stick. So if you want to move to the right, you're going to have to turn that cyclic movement into a bit of a forward slash. So it moves to the right, but the model actually still stays vertical. And then if you want to bring it back, then you've got to change that cyclic movement to a backslash. So keeping the model vertical, it should now move to the left. And then once you've got the hang of that, there is a small exercise which I call the left-right square. And what you've got to do is you've got to start your Tictocs, you've got to move to the left, and you've got to stop, and then you've got to move it back, and then you've got to stop, and then you've got to move it up, and then across and down in a square, and then all the way back to center. And this is an exercise we're going to use quite often because it's really good for changing the perspective. So you're seeing the model from a little bit from the left, a little bit from the right, and then you're also looking at it from underneath slightly. So you really need to practice this method of moving the model around without actually leaning it over to get that movement. So the next orientation is going to be nose down Tictocs. Now interestingly, this is going to be exactly the same sort of thing. If you want the model to go to the right, we're going to use a forward slash. And then if you want it to come back to the left, we're going to use a backslash. So exactly the same way as we did with nose up. So let's go into the maneuver, the left-right square. We'll go over to the left first. Stop. Take it back to the right. We're going to stop it and then move it up and take it into that square. And that's it. If you can do that square with a reasonable accuracy, then you're good enough at nose down Tictocs. The next one is aileron Tictocs with nose right. Now this should probably be quite easy for most of you, as it's one of the ones you generally start with. And also the tail thrust is actually holding you up in this position, so it's a lot less work. We'll start by just getting the model into position. So at the moment the cyclic is a bit of a hyphen, so it's just left to right. And if we want the model to now move to the right, what we do is we make that hyphen lean forward a bit. So it's almost becoming a backslash. And then once the model's moving, we just level it out again. So we're doing the hyphen. And then if we want it to move back, we'll just tilt that hyphen back a little bit. And that's how we get it moving. So once you've got the hang of this, we can move on to our left-right square. So we'll take it over to the left. We'll give it a pause. And we'll take it back over to the right and pause, and then we'll complete our square. And that's the square done. So now that we've got 3 points of our 4-pointer, we can actually start doing 3-pointed Tictoc reversals just to start working on how fast we can stabilize each of those 4 points. So if we go nose up, nose right, nose down, and then we reverse it. And we'll do these properly as part of our 4-point Tictocs, but it's actually good to start working on these now. And now we're on to the last of the 4 orientations, which is nose left. So this is normally the most difficult one for anyone. It's the least practiced, and also your tail thrust is actually pushing you down. So you generally either need to use a lot more cyclic or you need to slow it down a bit. So you need to practice it far more than you do any of the other orientations. So the stick movements are, funnily enough, exactly the same as for the nose right. So if we want the model to move to the right, we're going to lean the hyphen that way. And if we want to move the model to the left, we're going to lean the hyphen back that way. And then once we've got the hang of that, we can go into our normal left-right square. take it over to the left, right, and do the square. And now we've got all 4 orientations, we can move on to 4-point Tictocs. As I mentioned earlier, 4-point Tictocs are going to be the base of our 12-point Tictoc, so you need to be really, really good at these and you need to be able to reverse them. When I do 4-point Tictocs, I tend to do my quarter pirouettes as I push the model away. So as I'm applying negative collective, I do my quarter pirouette. You can do it the other way as well, where as it comes back to you, you can do your quarter pirouette. I don't think it really matters. I don't think it's ever made a difference in competition or anything like that. And the idea is that you stabilize the model as quickly as possible. So as soon as that model does the quarter pirouette and stops, it needs to be in a stable position, and that's what you're looking for. So let's do these 4-point Tictocs, and we're going to make them go as stable as we can, as quick as we can. And we can even do a normal Tictoc between if the stabilization is taking a bit longer than expected. But you want to get to the point where as soon as you do that quarter pirouette and you hit that toc on the end, the model is actually in a stable position. And the very last exercise is something I call offset Tictocs. So if we start in a nose-up Tictoc and we lean the nose to the left, but then we do a forward slash, so the slash is actually in the opposite direction, so your cyclic movement is actually in the opposite direction at which the model is leaning, you'll see the model basically stays in place. Take it back up to nose-up, stabilize the model, lean it left again, cyclic forward slash, and it basically stays in position. Now, you have to do a lot of practice to get it to stay Tictocking in that position continuously. You'll notice the model will drift, but we don't need to stay in that model continuously. We're actually just moving straight on to the next position. In offset Tictoc practice, what you do is you do center Tictocs, and then you do 1 to the left, and then back to the middle again, and then 1 to the right, and back to the middle again. And because you're only doing it for a split second, the model actually doesn't move away because you're straight back into your stable position. And then we'll do the same with nose down. And the interesting thing here is that you can see that the way you lean the model and that the movement that you make with the cyclic work in exactly the same way. So if we lean the model, the tail to the left, the cyclic becomes a forward slash. And if we lean the tail to the right, then the cyclic movement becomes a backslash. Now we go on to the aileron, so we'll start with nose right. And this works in exactly the same way. We're going to do stabilize in aileron Tictocs. Then we're going to move the nose up. And as we move the nose up, we're actually going to change the cyclic movement to the right. And we're just going to spend 1 moment there and then back to stabilization. And then the same the other way. You don't need to become hugely good at these in the offset positions, but the idea is that you can kind of do an offset Tictoc and then go back and you can stabilize straight away and the model hasn't moved, even though that the offset one wasn't completely perfect. And now we're finally here, 12-point Tictocs. So as long as you're really good at the 4-point Tictocs and you've done the offset Tictoc practice as well, this should actually come together fairly well. You will have weak points as you go around, and if you do find a weak point, so let's say your weak point is in the nose down position as you're moving to nose left, what you do is just reverse your 12-point Tictoc at that position. So you actually practice that section far more often than you do the rest. In fact, what you want to do is ideally you can start in that position, because what happens is if you tend to start at the beginning again, then you just tend to practice the beginning and then fall out at the bottom. So you actually want to start in the nose down position, just practice that section and then practice the reversal as well. And that'll really double up on that practice through your weaknesses. And because we've learned all 12 positions, or we've learned all 4 positions with the offsets, you should be able to do reversals really, really well. Now in the previous exercises, we've talked a lot about the stick positions and the cyclic movement. Now that is just a temporary thing. What you want to be doing is you really want to be watching the model, seeing what it's doing, and then flying the model. You don't want to be thinking about the sticks at all. But if you are struggling with a section, what you can do is you can slow down the practice in that area, have a think about what the sticks should be doing, and just spend a bit more time going back to the basics and possibly thinking about what the sticks are doing. And that's how you do 12-point Tictocs. So this is a really, really nice maneuver. It's actually a really feel-good maneuver. When you can do them and they hardly move at all, it just feels so good. And as long as you've got your 4-point Tictocs strong So you don't want to have any one of those orientations where it's actually weak and it takes you, a couple of Tictocs to stabilize it. Your 4-point Tictocs need to be the base of what's going on. And then combine that with the offset Tictocs, and the 12-point Tictoc is well within reach. In a future episode, we'll look at doing 12-point Tictocs skids in. So let me know what you thought of this video, if you prefer to see it done on the simulator where you can see a good representation of what the sticks are doing, or if you'd prefer to see it done in real life. Thanks for watching. Until next time.